Hi, everybody. Hope you're having a good evening. So excited to be starting off this live. We are going to be talking with Chaweon Koo about her book, Spellbound, A New Witch's Guide to Crafting the Future, which I have been digging into. I'm almost finished. I have like a little tiny bit left, little tiny bit left. I'm just going to wait for them to pop on and we'll join into the live. Up there you are. Okay. Hold on. Let's see. Sometimes we have to do this more than once because I don't know why but this is what's been going on. Hello.
Hello.
How are
I'm
you?
good. Thank you for having me.
Good. Thank you so much for joining. My name is Dina. I am co-owner of Amityville Apothecary. I know you're close, right? You're somewhere in the city. Is that correct? It is. So you're not so far away. We're about um, an hour on the Babylon Long Island Railroad, so not super far from you.
Cool. Yeah, I used to live in Long Island, maybe like 2 years ago, so I'm kind of
Oh,
familiar,
really?
not familiar with Long Island.
Okay, there you go. So, welcome on. So, we do these talks 2 or 3 times a month where we have different authors come on. We talk about the book. We have sold out of your book twice so far. So, we have more coming in. Um, but oh, hi. So, John wrote this book. It was published in 2022, right? Correct. But I don't know when in 2022 it published. Did it publish in the beginning of the year or the end of the year? Do you know?
I'm pretty sure it was closer to the beginning of the year
It's,
because, yeah, I think, but I am so bad with dates. So,
that that's okay because I've been digging into. I'm almost done. I have like a little tiny bit, like really nothing left, so much. But I had to take a detour because I've been binging your TikTok content.
oh, I hope that you've been enjoying my TikTok. Sometimes my TikToks, I don't take it too seriously. So,
Well, that's why they're so good. Because they're honest, right? So I've been going through your recent experiences. So I figured just so I could tee up what we're going to talk about, I thought it'd be interesting if you're up for it to have a conversation about Spellbound, why you wrote it, how the timing of when you wrote it affected how you wrote it, and if you can go back based upon your current experiences and what you're currently processing, I'm not going to give it away. But for those that have maybe seen what's been going on in your TikTok, would you go backwards and change it up a little bit?
mm, okay. Yeah, no one has asked me that question before, so yeah, that's really cool. Okay, I have to sort of think about this for a
Okay,
little bit.
you can think about it for a minute. I don't want to put you on the spot. I'm gonna give you a little bit of context because I see you and I'm like I know you, which is so uncomfortable because when you consume somebody on social media, it's like there's this familiarity that is creepy. Number one. Number two, we're of the same generation. I am slightly older than you, but we are both similar.
Gen X.
Yes, we're both Gen X, so I could tell immediately in the way you read and how you approach different aspects of magic that it's a very Gen X mindset. It comes out to me. Um, the other thing is you got me, I don't even know what, on page 8, page 10, right in the beginning, when you said that you learned about the term shadow work from Dr. Carolyn Elliott. I did her, was it wealth? I did something during COVID when I was stuck in the house. Um, which like blew my mind apart. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like so we have this similar thing happening here. So that's why when I was, you know, reading your book, going through some of your explanations and the way it It reminds me of the 90s when I was sitting in my first college philosophy class, which I then had this like light bulb realization that modern witchcraft is like the new philosophers,
I love that. I love that analogy.
right? So I just think it's super relevant, and it gives new witches, old witches, practice witches permission to sort of play in between the realms of just so many different ways of being a witch. I can't even explain it, but I'm just gonna let you talk about
I,
why you got into magic, why you wrote this book, and I'm gonna shut up for a minute.
oh, I mean, I'm totally just everything that you're saying, I'm vibing with it. Like, I'm so happy.
Okay.
Like, you get me, and I'm just like, yes, I love this. I didn't realize that my witchcraft is so Gen X coded, but now that you mention it, 100%, 100%. And I am so down with
Yeah.
that. Just, I love it. This book it's only available in hardcover, and I am just so honored that it's been selling out at your store, and I'm so honored that you asked me to come on to talk more about it. And the fact that it is a hardcover book, not available at all as a PDF, not available at all as an ebook, it was done on purpose because I wanted this to be a magical talisman. You know, in this digital world, I wanted something that felt like witchcraft. And I think that's one of the things about a Gen X type witch. We didn't grow up with the internet. We did not. So for us, it's tangible. For us, it's sort of like, yeah, we literally had to trek into like a big city to get glitter. You can just order it online, you know, like we had to go and we had to do like almost a hero's journey to get the whole, even the aesthetic, which by the way
Mm-hmm.
is so witchcraft. Aesthetic is magic. So the whole idea that this book and Gen X witchcraft and everything like that is very much about the embodied sense of what it means to be a magical person, like literally in this human incarnation. And to me, that reminds me of like 90s grunge. That reminds me of just like the whole sort of movement around that time, which was sort of like this neo punk movement,
Yeah.
this idea of like yeah, Riot Girl, all that stuff too. I mean, so you totally get it, and I'm so thrilled that you like totally get the unspoken subtext of what the sort of magic that I'm talking about is about.
Yeah, I think it's, you know, the in the early 90s when sort of like grunge and new punk was eclipsing hair metal, right? Remember that?
Yes.
And right, and you heard like, I could think of like the times that I heard, you know, Pearl Jam the first time, although I do not love Pearl Jam, but 10 I could listen to like crazy, but anything after that I'm like, because it evoked this newness, and it really was something that sounded how we felt,
Mm.
which you do talk about using sound in magic, which I was like that. So waking you up to like a sound of something new that maybe you didn't connect with, and now you connected with it, um, was so interesting. But when we were growing up, and formative in our teens, late teens, early 20s, to be a part of, grunge or new punk, and finding the aesthetic and finding the things, we really had to work for it. And I think the working for it was the gatekeeping, because now you don't really have to work for anything because it's all accessible to our fingertips. So there's this um, sense of either claiming something that doesn't belong to you, or trying to reserve it, or sort of steal it away from somebody else. When we were growing up, it was the fool's journey to even access either the knowledge, or the aesthetic, or just what we needed to do something. So it's such a different time. Although I would love to go back and be in that time again. I do love having all this information.
Yeah, I think you bring up a very good point, which is actually the basis of a lot of the magic I talk about, which is The journey of doing the magic and the effort you put into it is basically the magic. So
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people, they're going for that. I usually call it the air conditioner, memory foam, sort of like Etsy shop, you know, like everything is so easy, easy, easy sort of experience. Forget magic, just life in general.
Mm-hmm.
It's the, you know, like the fast fashion version of magic. The thing is that it's truly transformative part of any part of life experience is that hero journey. And that's what magic is. Magic is you're going deep into your psyche and you're having that heroine's journey. You're having the hero's journey. And that takes time, that takes effort. It takes a little bit of blood, sweat, and tears. It takes discomfort. And so when we're talking about what I would consider to be quote unquote like raw, real, and that's so unique to everybody, but the thing that kind of ties everybody's experience together is that you're going to create a movie about, let's say, this like young Shaolin apprentice who wants to become a great monk. They're not doing it over some sort of like 2 hour, you know, correspondence
Right.
course. They have to climb a mountain. They have to like literally with their arms, like take like a burning jar and move it from like one area to another. Now, with magic, you don't have to go that far, but it is like that, but in your mind. It is an alchemical process. And for those who actually do alchemy, like people think, oh, alchemy is something that died out a long time ago. No,
No, not at
there's
all.
no people who are literally extracting oil from gold. They're extracting these alchemical, literal, like literal oils that they sell online. They're extracting it from bone. So the thing is that these things, you can't rush it. You cannot rush it. It's always about like the rhythm of nature. I mean, isn't witchcraft about let's go with the flow of nature? You can't rush harvest time. You can't rush the seasons. There is a natural flow to things, but now we're just like this very postmodern idea of, and I blame sort of like the bros for this. It's sort of like this idea that we're going to dominate nature, we're going to dominate the processes of life, and this is what makes us human. This is what makes us superior and apex predators. And I think that witchcraft takes a step back and says, we're part of this ecosystem, we're part of this tapestry, and we're working with nature, so we're always going to win, bro, because you're trying to go against the wave, the tsunami. We're riding the surfboard with the tsunami.
Right.
That's the reason why you have to try to suppress us and oppress us, because you just saw that we were chilling on our surfboard. And so we kind of lost it for a while because it was taken away. This knowledge was taken away, but now it's coming back. And this is what's really exciting about talking to you and also just talking to witches like all around the world. What I've noticed in the past, I've been on TikTok for since 2020-ish. So it's been about 4 years, but I've been on YouTube with my YouTube channel, which is in water. It's like 2017 or something like
Yeah,
that.
you have a lot of guys. Head over because there's a lot of content there. You have a ton of
There's
content there.
there's a lot, and in fact, it's getting to the point where I'm just like, yeah, is there a way to, I don't know, use AI to kind of make it so that people can, you know, instead of spending like the next like 5 years like looking through all my content, is there a way for people to look through the stuff in a way that's a little bit more, I don't know, like modern life coded, which I totally get. Like witchcraft has always been about what's going on right now. Let's use the wisdom of our ancestors. Let's use the wisdom of natural processes in nature, but also let's live in the time of now, which is back in the day. I mean, they were like the punks. They were the, you know,
Yeah.
the heretics. They were the ones who were living cutting edge. And so instead of cosplaying or LARPing the past, what we can do is take wisdom from the past. Maybe we can even look towards the future, but we're living in the now. So what I've noticed is that there is, of course, in every sort of resurgence, in every sort of movement, there is going to be a group of people, well, where maybe you don't agree with what they say, but in general, it's so amazing that there's this mantle of like Gen Z witches and something about their fashion, their music taste, everything. The Gen X in me totally relates. And I'm just like, yes, this is what I'm talking about. DIY. You're like in it to like kind of get dirt under your nails.
Mm-hmm.
Curated, you're being real, and that sort of mentality going into witchcraft, I am for it, and I'm just like, I absolutely love it.
Yeah, I have learned so much from, Gen Z, these kids that are really wanting to know themselves, and I think that's why witchcraft is so attractive to them, because and somebody said, don't forget the warlocks. We don't forget you. We certainly do not. But as a Gen Xer that grew up in a time where everything was so defined and you were in, check the buckets of where you belonged. And now we're sort of like washing the lines, and we're, like you said, like riding the surfboard on sort of how things are changing. There's so much to learn from the younger generation that's coming up, because they are forcing us to look at what we thought as sacrosanct and true, and they're saying no, actually it could be like this, um which is so amazing. I am so here for learning. I mean, I have a daughter that's getting ready to go to college, so I'm sort of it like working in that space with. Anyway, it's scary. It's scary for me. It's scary for her. It's scary for everybody. Um, but just to see them move through the world, how differently they move through the world and how they view the world, and how so many of them know exactly who they are.
Yeah. I mean, I have this theory that everyone is born with this human right as a magical creature, as a witch. So even like the finance bro who lives next door is warlock, witch.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody, magic is your birthright. So just remembering that you're a witch and coming back to being a witch, I'm just like, well, of course there's more witches today. Of course, like every other girl is saying I'm a witch. And I'm like, yeah, you are. Like everybody is. So good. You're remembering yourself. Like remembering that you're a witch is actually remembering yourself.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, I 100% I'm not one of those people who gatekeeps and is like, you're only a witch if. I'm just like,
Right.
we started off as witches, but most of us forgot. But welcome back to remembering.
I I love that. I do think it is. I do think it is a remembering, and I love the fact that you're welcoming everybody into the community, even though some people might be scared shitless that you're like, let's work with demons. I love. Oh, Canella's so cute. Love that magic is your birthright. I wanted you to talk a little bit about your work. You do have a course on working with demons, working with angels, working with human design, which I would love to pick your brain about, because I find that to be so interesting. The intersection of human design and astrology, like you say in the book and in your TikToks, to like time your spells, or like what would be um, more beneficial to you than other sort of magics or spells. But what exactly made, like, what was, do you have a moment in time that was like, that's it, I'm going to start doing this? Or was it like a slow, gradual?
So I would say that I was taking this magic
Okay.
course,
Okay.
and I don't know why I decided to take this magic course. I was in Korea, and the
Okay.
first month that I went to Korea, I was planning on living there for a bit of a time, and this is back in 2015. The first month I was in Korea, I just randomly got invited to go see a Korean shaman and to see, like, it's called a kut, which is like a whole ritual. This is
Okay.
not a common thing. In Korea, shamanism is actually illegal. So this was kind of like underground, but it's kind of not. But so I was there, and then I was just like, you know what? I think it might be cool to learn more about witchcraft, simply because shamanism is not considered witchcraft in Korea. But I was just like, for whatever reason, it was just on my mind. I take this class, but I was not feeling it. It was one of those classes where you're like offering incense to the spirits of the
Mm-hmm.
land, and for me, I come from a very, I'm going to say, skeptical background. I've been an atheist since I was literally 5 years old. Like, I have been extremely, like, anti-religion, spirituality. I was kind of in the closet with spirituality because I was like, astrology is kind of interesting, but I can't admit it. I cannot admit it.
Okay.
It's going to take away from my street cred as, like, a new atheist or something like that, right? But the thing is that, like, finally, like in my mid 30s, I was like, let me take this witchcraft class. But it was a little bit too not my style. It's the style of so many other people, but it wasn't my style. But then there was a girl in the class. We were in a Facebook group. And she said, why don't you try something called the LBRP, the Lesser Banishing Ritual of Pentagram? And she was
Okay.
like, I, if you're not into like the angels and
Mm-hmm.
whatever, I like replaced the angels with, there was like a heavy metal song that was talking about these demons, and she replaced the angels with the demons based upon this heavy metal song. And I was like, you know that? And I was like, whatever. This sounds a little bit out there, but let's
Okay.
try it. The LBRP the classical way, OG style. It was the first time that I had experienced something that really felt like magic to me. For those who've never tried the LBRP is a type of exorcism, and it is considered to be like occult 101. So there is a slight distinction between occultism and witchcraft. For me, the main difference is kind of like a vibe. The occult is where you do the demon stuff. Like oftentimes you work with these like old books, these grimoires, and it's often called ceremonial magic simply because it is highly choreographed, like kind of like you're doing it by the book. Versus witchcraft can often be a little bit more ecstatic, although occult stuff can also be ecstatic. But witchcraft is a little bit more, I'm going to say, feminine, flowy. It's just a vibe thing. But to be honest, like sometimes interchangeable, obviously, because I'm a witch, but I also do occult rituals.
I consider ceremonial magic to be baking and like witchcraft to be cooking. So
Ah,
so baking is like more like precision, even though you can interchange some things, but there's chemical processes that go on in baking that you can't just be like, I'm not using any baking soda.
you know, I'm totally stealing that from you. it's that is perfect. Yeah.
Right?
Either way, either way,
Right.
something you're making something that's delicious,
Right.
but just oftentimes people be like when they're cooking something on the stove, they'll be seasoning something. They'll be like, "I'll stop when the ancestors tell me to stop."
Exactly. That's different. And you can do that, and you could like just put it on the back of your hand and taste, and you're like, I don't have oregano. Now I'm gonna use basil. You could tell them, and it's like a half Italian American girl, which is like most of Long Island. Um, but with baking, you can't do that.
Exactly. That is such a great analogy. But they're both still
Right.
creating delicious food, and so
Right.
for those who are witches who are just like, oh no, occultism sounds scary or something, I get it. But it's not that different. And I would also suggest that there's a lot of witches who are doing witchcraft and they're okay with it, but they're looking for something and they're not sure what it is, but they're feeling like something's missing. I would suggest looking into occult rituals because when I did the LBRP, which is an exorcism, you're calling upon I don't want to, give spoiler alert, too many spoilers, because I feel as though you want to do it. You can't just read it. You can't just hear about it. It's like sex. You can't just read about sex. You actually have to
Right.
have sex. So do it. And there's so many resources. I have an entire playlist on my TikTok. I think it's called Magic 101 or something like that, where I talk about like certain YouTube channels where I'm just like, yeah, definitely check this YouTube channel out. You're not going to do it perfectly the first time. In fact, you're probably going to mess it up. You're probably going to get barely 50% of it right, quote unquote, right. And yet you do it. And after you do it, if the occult path is correct for you, you're going to be like, wow, what just happened? This feels like magic. And I don't know how else to describe it to other people because you literally have to experience it firsthand. It's kind of like taking psychedelics. You can only describe it up to a certain point. But after a certain point, you can just be like, you know what, you got to do it. And if it's for you, you will come out of it a different person. And that, I think, was the first path or the first step in the path of going into occultism. And I guess right now, that's what people really know me for. Witchcraft to a certain point. But I mean, if you compare my TikTok and what I talk about in my YouTube channel and compare it to, let's say, the average witch talk account,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to veer into what maybe people would consider to be darker stuff, scarier stuff. I don't think it's darker or scarier. But I agree that it can seem more intense. But to me, I'm just like, well, it's ancestral technology. And any technology that goes deep is going to seem intense. AI seems intense. A microwave seems intense. People would have been burned at the stake for having microwave technology, like even like 200 years ago.
Right.
It doesn't mean that it's dangerous. It just means that it's intense. But I think that's what a lot of witches are looking for right now. They're just like, the world is crazy. There's a lot of trauma going on. I've experienced a lot of trauma. I'm looking for something that is intense because life is intense and I want it to meet me where I'm at. And I'm just be a cult. Voila.
That that is also a great analogy. Life and the world is intense, and it only seems to be intensifying, right? Like it's like every year it seems to ratchet up a little bit. Although I guess being old, like an older, like older Gen X, I try and remember some of the other shit that people went through. And I'm like, well, yes, it's intense, but I feel like we've always, as human beings, been intense. But
The high
I,
octane intense. So one of
yeah.
the things I've been going through is this idea of like life is a spiral. So maybe the first level of the spiral, and the spiral just goes up and up. The first level of the spiral, of course, as a spiral, you're going to come back to the same point, but
Mm-hmm.
be an inch above. So it's going to be the same thing, but it's going to be, in a way, like more subtle and therefore more difficult, because it's like, yeah, you can tell if something is very obviously a certain way, but what happens when you make it a little bit more subtle, make it a little bit more high octane? All of a sudden, it's a little bit more challenging because it's not so clear. It's not so black and white. And so each time we like basically pass like a video game level, I suppose, and we go up another octane, which is kind of what we want to do because that's evolution.
Mm-hmm.
But we're also going back to the same point. So it's almost like, why are we going through this shit again, right? Why the same thing again and again? But it's like, it's not the same thing. You're going back to the same point, yes, but it's an inch above the level that you were before, or maybe 2 inches above. So it's a little bit more higher octane. And to me, witchcraft and the occult are tools that evolve at every level. Religion
Mm-hmm.
is stuck at certain levels, right? But
Yeah.
the thing is that witchcraft and the occult, because it's a lot more, I'm going to say, flexible, because it doesn't have the same level of, I'm going to say, set in it's almost like totally baked and fossilized the way that religion is.
Right.
That's why witchcraft and the occult, it's never going to die out the same way that religions come and go, because it's so much like your own personal experience that you can infuse into whatever. Now, people can take the occult, they can take witchcraft and turn it into a religion. People have, and that's a completely different topic.
Mm-hmm.
About the sort of witchcraft and the occult that our ancestors were doing, because they were like, if our crops don't grow, we're gonna starve.
Yeah, we're gonna die.
If me, as somebody who's living in Hellenistic Egypt back in the turn of like the millennium, Jesus time, if my husband decides to throw me out on the street, there's no recourse for me. So I better do some magic. So I'm going to go to somebody who knows what they're doing, or I'm going to do some magic. And I don't care. I don't care what the dogma is. I just need it to work. I
Right.
need it to work. Life is real. Life is intense. I want to eat. I want to have a roof over my head. I don't want to starve. I don't want to beg on the streets. Life was real for our ancestors. These are ancestral technologies. And if they worked for our ancestors, as you mentioned, life was always intense. But now we're at a higher octane intense, which in a way is unprecedented in human
Yeah.
history. Our ancestors, at least they had some sort of idea because it happened before. For us, we're in a world where we know that it's intense, and yet we're almost gaslighting ourselves. But
We are. We
we,
definitely are gaslighting ourselves.
but fortunately, we have technologies like the occult, like witchcraft, like plant medicines, whatever it is, working all together. And by the way, psychology is also a type of witchcraft as well. Art, culture, all of these things are also witchcraft. But we get to decide, are we going to use them, work with them, sit with them recreationally, superficially, or are we going to go intense? Are we going to go deep? Are we going to go in there like medicine? We can take anything and go deep and make it into medicine. And that is an alchemical process. And what is alchemy? Alchemy is witchcraft. So basically, what I write about in my book is just basically, listen, I'm just a tour guide. This is the stuff that I've noticed. But hey, if you're like really into art, if you're really into like playing video games, there is a way to turn video game playing into a type of magic, to make it healing, to make it into medicine. Or you can turn it into a drug that is destructive and that numbs you out. It's your choice. But isn't that great that we have this alchemy? We have this ancestral technology that was just like, yeah, you just got some spit and a bunch of leaves. That's magic. You just have your own words, and your own intent. That's magic. And then a bunch of priests came in and were just like, no, 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 no. Only we have magic. And so our ancestral technologies, they were kind of lost for a while, but not totally. And now we're remembering, oh yeah, okay, ancestral technology. Not the priests. Some priests have magic, but some don't. A lot
Yeah.
don't. Oh, as an individual, I have magic too. Oh yeah, cool times. Let's go.
I love that. It's true. Remem- Remembering, right, our ancestral technologies. And I think for me, when people come into the shop and ask, where do I begin? People are always like, where the hell do I start? And my advice is sort of how you start Spellbound with your people, with your ancestors. Who,
Yeah. And
who, whose shoulders are you standing on?
yes. And there's a lot of people who are just like, well, I'm adopted, so I don't know. And I don't want to do like a one in me because I don't want them to have my information. It's like, that's cool. You can use your imagination,
Mhm.
educated guess, or you can also start with your cultural ancestors. Maybe
Mhm.
you're a musician who was totally influential to you. For me, David Bowie is one of my ancestors.
I love it.
And, and then a lot of people are just like, well, what if I get it wrong and I culturally appropriate? And I get it. And just the fact that somebody is worried and wondering about that is a green flag to me, saying the chances of you being so self-aware and being like, I don't want to do this like weird cringe thing. I'm like, you're good. You're
Right,
good.
because you're aware. You're self-aware. So the chances of you doing the cringe thing is. Have you gotten into the lane of TikTok with I don't know why, with the Oshun girl? Have you the girl that she's like awoken like every real practitioner because she says like she's speaking for Oshun but she's not crowned. This
Oh,
it's like literally been like the past 8 days of my TikTok for you page was literally like this girl.
you know, that to me is, I don't want to go back to Nietzsche because Nietzsche as a philosopher, some of his stuff,
Mhm.
I'm like the number one first podcast bro, right? So it's like, ew. But at the same time, in his philosophy, he talks about what is basically like that priest slave mentality, that mentality of like, everything has to go through me. I'm the spokesperson. I'm the person who decides what is and what isn't correct, right? There's an entire caste of people, there's an entire group, and we are anointed by some higher authority. Whether it's the Catholic Church or whether it's somebody claiming that Ocean speaks through her, it's that same mentality. It's the same priest thinking. It's a religious thinking.
Mhm.
Is that I don't know. Like I'm not about that life. I'm
I
willing.
mean, I'm not either, but I found it to be so interesting because I I I have one of our mantras in the shop is sort of like a fuck around and find out philosophy. So so I also do not want to fuck around and find out. I will also say to other people, you're going to fuck around, you're going to find out. Right? So I tend to leave the things that I don't know about in terms of like my ancestry that don't feel like I could reach or touch, you know, I sort of leave that over there. However, I that's not to say that you can't get involved in those practices where you get a reading and you're called to it. Because I do know people that are crowned, and it is a religion, that are crowned in the religion that went through the process, and that is a religion.
Yeah, like okay, so I know because as somebody who's East Asian, I know a lot of people who are like into martial arts, right?
Mhm.
And let me tell you, there are some white boys who are deeper and more sincere in their martial arts than some Asian people. So sure, like it, is it likely that like somebody who has that cultural and bloodline heritage that they have the access to the resources to go deeper? Sure, but at the same time, I think the more that I go into this entire like world of just anything, like anything that you're going deep into, ultimately it's about intent and ultimately about sincerity and authenticity. And so to me, the fastest way to really chop up and like kind of warp authenticity is to get into the mentality of like a certain sort of weird, insecure gatekeeping. So the type of witchcraft in the occult that I talk about, it's about expertise. So what it's saying is that, listen, it's not even about the whole ethical idea of like, oh, you should only do the things that are like your cultural blah. It's sort of like, girl, like you don't know what you're doing because you don't have the access to the back rooms where all the real conversations are happening. If you're going to go scuba diving and you're not going to learn how to scuba dive, you're going to drown. So just in terms of
Right.
expertise, you're somebody who's going after expertise, you will inevitably have cultural appreciation because you're going at it for real, because it's effort that you can't make up. So go for expertise, and then everything else will fall into place. Now, there's some people who, instead of expertise, what they're going for is, I guess, I don't know, like, to me, it looks like a sort of like self-aggrandizement. You know, it's sort of like, only through me, I'm the expert, look at me, look at me, look at me. I will look at you if you're an expert. I don't even have to like try, because I'll just be like, this person knows it and I can feel the vibe, and I think most people can. But the thing is, everybody can be an expert in their own type of spirituality. To me,
Yeah.
that's the most authentic thing that a person can do. I can tell when somebody is just like, I do chaos magic that is David Bowie, plus I work with the demons, but I'm also like getting initiated in some sort of ATR, like African traditional religion. So I'm part of this, and I'm just like, I could feel it that they're like totally for real. They're
Yes.
sincere, even though they're doing so many different things.
Right. Right. Right.
So
Right.
it's like that I think is the future. That to me is what modern witchcraft is about.
That, you know, that is modern. That is modern witchcraft. And I wanted to bring it up because you spoke about sincerity, and in your book on page 49, your red flags. Your
Yeah.
red flags in magic teachers.
Yeah.
So important. So important because you know your profile photo on TikTok is I will not DM you for readings because it's maddening how many people are scamming, intimidating, taking advantage of people's pain, of their anxiety, sliding into their DMs, saying things, people that, want to fulfill some sense of self, getting into some type of spirituality, which really isn't about knowing themselves better or, becoming the best, most self actualized version of themselves. It's about getting followers and having people sort of subscribe to them. And then they could feel nice and safe and secure in this echo chamber where everything is sort of being right, like bounced back right to them. um I loved this because you talked about like reading and researching, and I was like, I wonder if you were a history major.
I
It's
I chose the easiest major in college because I was like, I'm not about this college life either. But I've noticed that if we're interested, like there's some people that I know, like all their life, they were like underachievers, right? All they did was like play video games and like just sleep. But then they found something that really
yeah,
resonated with them, and all of a sudden they became an expert.
yeah,
And it naturally. And every time they were just like, oh, you know what, this is too hard. I just want to like leave this. Something happened in their life that kind of pushed them back into it. So I'm just like, go with that. Like some people are experts in like doorknobs. And I'm like, I trust doorknob expert more than I trust like somebody who has like a million followers
yeah,
on social media, but is like totally basically cosplaying something else. Because at least doorknob expert is so authentic to themselves, and therefore it's a cascading effect. They have more natural magic, basically, than somebody
yeah.
cosplaying as somebody who is enlightened, somebody who is an expert. And I think that is something that it took a long time for me to learn, because when I first started out in witchcraft, I was easily impressed, just like everybody else. Easily impressed. It took a long time for me. I've been in this for almost a decade now,
Yeah.
really doing this full time. It took me, I'm going to say, the first like 3 to 4 years. And we're talking me doing this full time. Most people, when they're doing witchcraft and they start out, they're not doing it full time.
Right.
I was doing it full time, and I was getting bamboozled, and I was getting totally hustled like left and right. This is a very natural part of it, right? This is just the journey that we go through.
That is true.
Yeah. I mean, and this is one of the reasons why I get it. I get it why people are, a lot of people are just like, how could you let yourself fall for this? Or like, don't you know better? And it's like, well, I didn't know better.
Right. Right.
I learned literally through like pain and suffering and humiliation and everything like that. But those are great teachers. And I'm now at the point where I can just be like, guys, I've been there. I know. And doorknob person is the person you want to listen to. Sure, they're going to be talking about doorknobs, but the thing is that when they talk about something else, you can listen to them about that something else, because they're so authentic about who they are. Authentic people are just natural witches. And so modern witchcraft is basically, here are all the tools, everything. This is what's so great about the internet. Like, we have access to everything, right? Because we have access to everything, now you get to choose from your own authentic self. I resonate with this. I resonate with that. Not because
Yeah.
it's popular on social media, but because I literally resonate. Why are you choosing what literally resonates, even if it's not popular? You're doing it because you will become an expert naturally if you go with what resonates. So the number one thing that I base so much of my witchcraft on are self-knowledge modalities like astrology, like human design, because they kind of help you go through the deconditioning process. Because sometimes in the beginning, we need something like a system like astrology to be like, don't look at that, look at that. And
Yeah.
we have been told what to look at all our lives. So maybe the first couple of years, we do need a system like astrology or human design to be like, you're more of a autumn color rather than a winter color. But then maybe we'll decide later on, you know what? No, I am more winter color, but that's cool. But first, we need something to help decondition us. And that's the reason why I started out really going deep into astrology. Now it's human design, but it could be anything. It could be doing years of talk therapy. It could be doing anything that helps you know more about who you actually are, not what everybody else tells you you should be. There's so many people who do magic for money. They're just like, I just want to be rich. And I'm like, is it that society is telling you that you need to make a boatload of money, or do you actually want to be rich? And they're like, no, I want to be a millionaire, a billionaire. But it's like, but is that really you? Right? Because what you don't want to do is chase after a golden cage, because I mean, you might end up in it, but it's still
Yeah.
a cage. So that's
Absolutely.
why learning who you are, like really deep, like remembering yourself, like remembering that you're a witch, the deconditioning, that's the foundation of everything. It's the authenticity of who you are. I would even say at this point in my magic, I've been doing magic super, 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 super intensely. Like, we're talking like to the point where most people would be like, you are crazy. I've been doing magic super intensely for like at least 7 years. I'm at the point where now, if we're talking about the spiral, I've come back to the beginning, but like higher octane,
Right.
better or worse. It's just I've passed this level and now I'm at a second, but I'm starting from the beginning again, beginner's mind. And how I'm doing magic right now is going to be very different than a witch who's like 14 years old, who's just starting yesterday. And for me to then just be like, my way at this level is like what you should be doing. It's like, no, do what you're doing, like right here, you know,
Yeah.
do your like cute little TikToks, do whatever and stuff like that. Go through all this stuff, follow all the wrong people, whatever, you know, that's your journey and that's how you're going to get to it authentically. And that's the reason why at this point, I don't even call myself a teacher anymore. I'm just like a tour guide. I'm a curator, because what am I going to teach? You to be me? No, thank you, because you're not me. And I don't want you to be me. In fact, for me to teach you how to be me is stripping you of your magic. So I'm just a tour guide. I'm just like, hey, you want the experience of what it's like, how I do magic? Cool. And maybe it's almost like going to, like, I don't know, some African safari. Like, have this experience. And if you resonate with it, and if you fall in love with lions in Kenya, then you can become like a lion expert on your own time. But for me to just be like, you have to be a tour guide, you have to like move to Kenya, no. So in that sense, I'm just like, this is what magic is about to me now. And so when I talk about like my books, like Spellbound,
Mm-hmm.
I need to write a sequel, because Spellbound is for me, like this level, and
Yeah.
now like, and this is what's so great about witchcraft, right? I'm going back to the same practices. I'm gonna like put out another class soon about tarot for shadow work. I've been doing tarot for years, but guess what, like, it's going to be a different way of doing it. So witchcraft is growing with me, versus I would argue that mainstream religion, it doesn't have the same flexibility. Even like mainstream like new age thinking doesn't have the same flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
Craft, occult stuff, it does have that flexibility. So I'm just like, yeah, everybody, remember you're a witch, because now you have these tools that are going to grow with you.
Yeah, I think it's because also occultism and witchcraft, again, as you understand yourself more deeply, you do change your perspective of how you move through the world and how, I like, it's really interesting because in listening to your TikToks and your experience, doing some of the psychedelics that you've been doing, which full disclosure, I have never done. I'm scared shitless of it, but I love hearing other people talk about it. Um, of you know, co- like conscious, like just the idea, like playing with the idea of consciousness, playing with the idea of these experiences, and like the more you become aware and see them, and then go through these experiences, then like you're sort of like again self-reflecting and you're ratcheting it up. It's just it's just like that's why I felt like this is like witchcraft and magic and occultism is like the new philosophers, because I feel like we're sitting in a cave talking about like the idea of existence and what is consciousness, what does it mean, what's the experience, like what's the spirituality and the love and light, like how do we look at darkness, why do we look at darkness, why are we afraid of darkness, like it's endlessly fascinating to me.
I would say that for 99% of the population who decides that they do want something that is real and raw, but they don't want to go super intense because, they got taxes to pay, they got kids to take care of, totally valid reasons. I would say the number one thing that they can learn from witchcraft and the occult is how to deal with the darkness, how to deal with things like shadow work, things like the unsavory sides, the decay. I mean, witchcraft, there's like this very, I'm going to say like polished witchcraft that treats Mother Nature the same way the patriarchy treats women, which is we only like nature when it's pretty crystals and when it's just like, I don't know, like palatable. Versus nature is babies, like baby bunnies that are being eaten by falcons. Real nature is things dying, things decaying. Real nature is very actually wild, primal, scary. But if we can work with that, what is primal and wild and scary, and based on your lifestyle, it could be something that doesn't have to be super, super, super intense. Not everybody is meant to sit with plant medicines, to sit with 5-MeO. But I would say that the average person, when they have experienced maybe some part of themselves that they want to integrate, a shadowy part, like for them to finally admit, you know what, I 100% do things that I'm not proud of. Like for them to just be like, I'm going to let go of the shame because I'm going to admit that I do this thing, and I've been arguing with people online and saying, no, I'm a good person, you're the bad person, I'm projecting, but now I'm going to like actually embrace it and be like, this is part of the human experience. Wow, like that is a type of alchemy, and that is a type of witchcraft. And then you remember more of who you are. So witchcraft isn't just about using like the herbs and like the crystals and everything like that. Witchcraft is actually any sort of alchemical process. And the alchemical process, let me tell you, like any sort of controlling government, any sort of controlling religion, any sort of controlling idea, even if they claim to know what's best for you, they will try to suppress it. You know that you're on the right track because your authenticity is going to be very threatening to others. But the cool thing is that once you get rid of them, those who are just like, no, like you can't do that because I disapprove. It's like, I don't care. Goodbye. Right? Then you're going to find the people who are just going to be like, I hold space for you. Witchcraft is space holding for so much diversity because what is nature? Nature is not a monoculture. Nature is not simply just fields of the same soybean or corn growing. Nature is also the rainforest. Nature is the ocean with the mountains juxtaposed with like this and that. Nature is a diverse ecosystem. When there is monoculture, you get the potato famine. You get just horrible things happen, forest fires. So if we're talking about witchcraft, like the raw witchcraft that is constructive, all we need to do is just step outside and look at what's literally around us and see, what does nature actually do? Nature holds space and holds natural rhythms, doesn't rush things. And nature says there needs to be swans and cockroaches and vines and, baby bunnies dying and like this happening and that happening. It's all a part of the ecosystem. To even accept that and to be part of that requires a type of shadow work that most people may not want to do right now, but they can start taking baby steps towards doing. And when they get to a certain point where maybe they're not fully totally into it, but they're like, okay, I get it, I may find it still scary because the idea of giving up control and letting nature take its course, whereas now I'm just like, I want myself to be in control. Guess what? witchcraft can help you with that. Witchcraft can help you feel more in control while giving up control. That's the best magic. That's this weird, like liminal space
Mm-hmm.
where the happens. This is where occult rituals, I think, thrive, because occult rituals, as you mentioned, it's very precise. It's choreographed. So it tells you ahead of time, this is literally what you have to do. Practice it. It's almost like a dance. Practice it. Get some muscle memory into it. It's going to make you feel like you're in control, so that when you go into the ritual space, you're going to have a swagger. You're going to feel like there's like, you have a certain riz. You're going to do that magic ritual in that space. The world is scary, everything's scary, but you're going to do that magic ritual. You're going to do that occult ritual. It's choreographed. You're going to feel magical. You're going to implant your petition into your brain. That's literally what magic rituals do. They put you in this hypnotized mind state, almost as if you just woke up or you're just about to fall asleep. Your brain is like a baby brain when you're in ritual. And you're creating this petition of this thing that you want. But the thing is that when you do the thing that you want and you say, I want this, sooner or later, what's going to happen if you do enough magic rituals, magic is going to show you this is how you tweak the petition. So as long as you don't give up, maybe it's not perfect now, but step by step by step by step by step, you just face the lack of control, scared, I want a little bit more control. Cool, start there, step by step by step. And the magic technology grows with you. This is what's so great. It's
Yeah.
literally modular. It's modular. So instead of investing all this time learning all these like religious things that like after a while you have to abandon, it's like, just start with magic. Just do the magic. Just do the ritual. It's going to grow with you. And there's going to be a point, and I can only describe it up to a certain point, this special point, but there's going to come a point where you can literally almost drop, and it's a very mystical experience. You can drop the whole, I want a Lamborghini petition. You no longer have to do it. Or if you need to do it, you're going to do it, and it's going to feel so free. And I can't explain it. But there's going to come a point where if you don't give up on magic, you're going to get to that point. And then all of a sudden, you don't have to do the ritual anymore because your entire life becomes a ritual. I've had this conversation with other occultists, and we've discussed how nowadays, sometimes all we have to do is think about something and it happens. Why? Because we've done so much magic ritual. The muscle memory is such a part of us. And we've reached the point where it's that mystical, like it just is. Everything that we do becomes magic ritual. Not in sort of like a, oh, I'm so great way, but it's sort of like, well, I've been doing magic rituals like a crazy person for like 7 years. After a certain point, your body's just like, we'll just stay in this state. It is going to be what it is. And then all of a sudden, life just event after event after event. It's sort of like, I thought about this 2 days ago and it just happened. And then you have to ask yourself, is this thing happening because I'm just surrendering to the way that life wanted me to go? And I'm just like, I don't know about that. Or are you creating it because you wanted it? And then you're just like, wait a second, maybe.
Right.
And that's when it becomes like when people talk about like the true alchemy, the great work, to me, like people made it sound as though the great work is you're going to get in touch with a holy guardian angel. You're going to talk to some supernatural being. For me, my experience with the great work was even more profound. That my experience with the great work was I become one with basically life. And then all of a sudden, I don't have to try anymore unless I want to. And let me tell you, it is the most terrifying thing I've ever experienced in my life. And I've experienced it gradually over the past year. But the fact that somebody like me, an atheist, somebody who's a skeptic, somebody who's just literally, even now, I piss people off because I'm just like, you weren't talking to spirits, probably not your air conditioner, right? Somebody like me who can experience this simply because I didn't give up on magic. I just kept going with magic. To me, that is the most hopeful thing of all. It's like anybody, if it's me, if I can do it, literally anybody can. But the thing is, you're not going to do it the way that I did it. All I can do is be a tour guide and say, well, I mean, this is me, but let me tell you, there's like all these other tours and stuff too, and you can just pick up a lot of cool things. I didn't do it, but you could do it. But let's start with knowing yourself and deconditioning yourself. And everything that you do to decondition yourself and all the witchcraft you do, it is never going to be in vain. It is always going to build, it's going to grow with you, it's going to be modular. So for me, witchcraft is sort of like, yeah, why wouldn't anybody do it? Why wouldn't like the entire world want to do it? Oh, it's because there's a group of people who are just like, nope, we want to control you. Nope, we want you to stay basically sleeping and
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just like, oh, I see. They're invested in it. So they're using their witchcraft on you. So yeah, let's not do that, right? It's like 2024, like soft girl era is in. Like, let's other people's witchcraft going on you, bewitching you. If you want to do it, fine, but like maybe that's not a vibe anymore.
Yeah, somebody said I used to be afraid because I was always taught that if you practice it, bad things will happen to you. Well, that's, when we first opened the shop 5.5 years ago, I, Danielle, my business partner, she's on. She was, and we talked about this in like our most recent podcast. I think it was our most recent podcast about the concept of witch. And in the beginning, Danielle was a little bit more uncomfortable, just like with the term, because you are deconstructing it. You're taking away, whatever you want to call it. You want to call it ancestral trauma, just your historical learning, sitting, what your first, you know idea of which was like the lady with the green face, the bad nose, and the warts, whatever it is. You know, I guess for me, I was always so intrigued by it, but I think because I always identified with witch because I was always alone. I'm an only child. Well, sort of. I'm my mother's only child. My dad had other children. That's fucking complicated. But I consider myself to be an only child, and I was the only grandchild for 12 years.
Wow.
So yeah, so I was really just sort of like fucking alone, making up like in the woods, making up games and just entertaining myself. So the concept of witch and magic and ritual was always like, yeah, I want to be a witch. I mean, I also wanted to be an orphan, and I also wanted to be a saint and get stigmata. So I don't know, go fucking figure. But Gen X, what can I tell you? Um,
I love it, and to me, like that's the reason why I say that witchcraft is aesthetic, right? Because it's the same with music. Why did you buy your first album? Because you thought the album cover was cool, and then you got into like whatever band, like whatever cool shit that you're into now. So I think that the aesthetic is such a powerful and legit way to get into it. So if you're just like, I want stigmata, I'm just like, yes, go for it, do it, go for it. Put makeup on, like cosplay, like do whatever you need to do it.
yeah,
And if you're witchcraft, like if your path, like then it leads you into learning more about certain things. That's cool. There's plenty of people who've done, the aesthetic thing, and then they decided, like the very obvious ways of doing witchcraft, like with the rituals and stuff, that's not for me. But then you look at their life, they're cooking, they're creating delicious meals, and I'm like, you're feeding your family? That's witchcraft. They're having families, they're giving birth, and I'm like, my sister, she has 3 kids. I don't have kids myself, but a woman's body, like holding a child, giving birth, and then feeding the child, I'm sorry, but that is literal witchcraft.
yeah,
I'm stunned by like what a woman's body can do.
yeah.
Um,
It's amazing.
it's absolutely amazing. So also I'm kind of advocating for the expansion of the definition of witchcraft because again, there was a moment where I had that very mystical experience of where everything dropped and I was like, my entire life is a ritual. I would also like us to get to that point because I dearly want people to also experience it. And it would be nice if a lot of people experience it at once. And I think one of the, efficient ways to get that ball rolling is to make it less about magic is out there and like regular life is here and make everything in life magic. Because literally, when everything in your life becomes magic, then the really fun shit happens. And so I'm just trying to like have everybody, I'm just like on this really cool roller coaster ride. And I'm like, guys, like get on, snap to it, get on it. Like, what are you waiting for? And so I think maybe part of the fear is because the I'm going to call them the priest class, like the controllers. They were just like, only we get to experience it and only we get to decide if it is for you or not. And it's like, how you guys don't even know what it's even like, it's all
Yeah.
books and it's all just abstract thinking. It's not bodied. It's not embodied. So, push them aside and just jump on this roller coaster ride. Just try it. Just try it. And
Give yourself permission to just try.
permission. And if you think that cooking is witchcraft, I'm just like, I'm all for it. Some people literally are doing alchemy. If you think that creating videos is a type of witchcraft for you, I know so many people, when they started a YouTube channel, their life changed. It was a type of
Yeah.
magic. And I'm just like, of
Yeah,
course.
you're right.
course. And I'm just like, and they had to act, and you know, I know people in their quest to become a millionaire because it was the right path for them. They had to face so many of their shadows, their core wounds, the shame of like, do I even deserve to be a millionaire? That was alchemy, that was shadow work, that and making money was them manifesting their magic. And so I'm just like,
Yeah.
limiting our definition of magic. And if we're limiting our definitions of magic, we're also limiting the tools that we can use. A lot of people don't consider psychology to be magic. And I'm like, what?
Oh, it's definitely magic. It's definitely magic.
Magic. So how about we put out all the tools, we make as much of our lives as magic as possible so that as many people as possible can get to this deconditioned, truly authentic part, and then we can start having fun in life. Because I don't know about you, but having a lot of people having fun in life, even if life sometimes sucks and it's like, I kind of hate it here, but at the same time, it's kind of fun. Like, that's cool. But there's too many people right now who are truly suffering, like
Yeah.
suffering. And when I see that, and it just hurts so much, and you can't just be like, well, you know, like you don't have to suffer because
Right, right.
whatever. It's like, yeah, you can tell them as much as possible about how great sex is, but unless they actually do the sex, they're not going to know it. So how do you make people do the sex? You know, do the sex. How do you have people
Right.
like do the well? Maybe help them see that just by living, they're experiencing magic. By being born, they're a witch. By literally just being, they're literally doing the most awesome magic that is possible. Like, I don't know how we got here. Like, I don't even know like how, I barely even know like how my stove works. And here we are speaking over technology on this tiny wormhole of
I know.
like literally a phone is a type of wormhole. It
Yeah.
is a space warping thing. And I'm just like, how does this happen? I don't know. Technology is also great magic. So many people in magic, they're anti-technology. And it's like, why? Humans made it, and humans are a part of nature, and humans are magical creatures, and therefore, just by definition, technology is magic. So once that happens, and once our mindset changes, the literal, like, I'm going to say obvious magic that you do is going to work even better. And you're going to start seeing like, oh, wait a second, I can stack this on top of this. I can stack the psychology on top of the tarot cards with the cooking,
Yeah.
fashion, and the music, and the shamanic drumming, and whatever else, you know, I don't care. Like, whatever else you need to do. To me, I'm just like, oh my God, that's great. Their magic is not going to look anything like your magic, is not going to look anything like my magic. And that's exactly the way that I want it, because no monoculture, diversity in an ecosystem.
Yeah.
And also one of the reasons why in my book, like I'm talking about my journey so much, because I don't want it to be one of the, to be a witch, you need to do this. It's sort of like, yeah, tour guide here, right?
It's very, but it comes across as very, there's so much information that really does make it like a tour guide, like about astrology, about tarot, about different, divination practices, about, blockchain, about like, there's just there's so much in here. And I do think it gives people the permission, like you said, to look at everyday aspects of what we go through in life and see it through the magical lens, right? I like to play with the concept of all of our experiences being like, I always say it's like when you get your eyes checked and you have like the thing and like all the things and you're like A B 1 2 and you're like, I don't fucking know, there's so many lenses, and you're like, put the last lens on. That's if we like put the magic ones on, right? Give ourselves permission. It does it. It's just we then maybe are this human crazy experience. Although I don't know if it was in your book or in your TikTok where you said you sort of liked being a human, and I was like, my people, because like I love like this messy, disgusting human form because we get the this.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And I love that your perspective is different from my
Yeah.
perspective, is else's perspective. Even though there's some people, yeah, I do find them annoying. And I'm just like, oh, shut up. But at the same time, I'm like, I would rather give them space to have their annoying perspective than to have everyone be like me, because that's not magic. That's monoculture. So,
Yeah, exactly.
so I mean, in that sense, like it's important that we all kind of we feel comfortable share our own personal magic journey, because in the beginning, if somebody's just starting to decondition, our like the way that I've done magic, maybe somebody wants to do it exactly like me for a bit, because we have to start somewhere.
Right.
It's nothing wrong with starting with a cookbook with recipes. There's nothing wrong with it. But at the same time, eventually you are going to take off the training wheels and you're going to go and do your own thing. And that's the way it's supposed to be. But in the beginning, it's totally okay to just be like, I have no clue. I'm scared. But I'm kind of resonating with this person, just like from a vibe point of view. So I'm just going to do what they do. And it's like, yeah, totally. Just copy me or copy you or copy anybody else. Do it. And then there's a point where you can be like, I don't need to copy anymore because I've tried. The most important thing is that you don't give up. You just keep going, keep going, keep going.
I love it. So we have your book. You said so you have a couple of courses that people could find you on your website, on your TikTok. You have like a little link tree going on. Do you want to just give a quick shout about what your offerings are and what you have coming up?
Ooh.
You're like, no. No.
Blanking out right now. So basically, when I mentioned like just like I'm a tour guide and stuff, so I have a bunch of classes that are based around like demon magic, angel magic, Jupiterian magic, which is finance magic, etc., etc. And if people want to, like if they want to check it out, that's cool. I also have tons of free resources. I have like 5,000 TikToks. I have a shit ton of like I think over 100 YouTube videos. I've been on podcasts and now
Yeah.
I'll also have been on podcast. So it would literally take like 5 years for somebody to go through everything.
Yes.
And that's, but I totally get it. Like the classes are more like if you want something that's a little bit more like organized and stuff. But there's also a lot of free information. And in like September, I'm gonna start like a whole new thing. It's kind of like for now, but yeah, I would say probably for a new witch who's like first starting out in magic, the
Yeah.
book is going to be the best thing. And also, to be perfectly honest, like going to a business like yours, like Amazon's okay and stuff, but if you can go to a bookstore and get a physical book from a bookstore,
Yeah.
whole journey of like getting in your car or whatever, going to a bookstore and buying it, touching it, feeling it in your hand, and having that human to human exchange. That is a type of initiation, a type of magic journey in itself. So I highly encourage people to go to smaller bookstores, smaller businesses, smaller online bookstores as well to get the book. Amazon is okay, but I mean, the small businesses are
Yeah.
where it's at.
Jeff Bezos has enough money now. It's fine. He's good. He said.
He's totally, yeah, he's fine. He's totally
He's going to
fine.
be okay. I promise you. If you buy a book from us, he's not going to be crying at night about it. Thank you so much for spending time with us tonight. You are open invitation to come to the shop. If you ever want to come out, check out, teach a class, do something in person, whatever, open invitation. We have so many exciting things going on always. If you'd be down, we'd love to send you some book plates so people could get a signed copy of your book if you're down with it. No pressure.
Of course.
Awesome. And I want to thank you guys for watching. Thank you so much for spending time with us. I appreciate it. Everybody appreciates it. We're gonna save this to the feed and we're gonna like parse it up and put it out there on our YouTube. So thank you.
Thank you, Dina. And I see Danielle was in the
Yes.
chat, and thank you.
All right. Have a good night. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.